Hi everyone, my name is Konnor. I'm one of the fourth-year medical students at UC Irvine in sunny Southern California. We're going to talk about a lot of things. How to find a mentor, the importance specifically of a clerkship mentor or during that clerkship phase, how to communicate, how to be proactive, things to avoid, and why I encourage you to be a mentor to others too. We're going to talk about everything under the sun about mentorship, and I feel like it is well worth your time. So I think finding a mentor, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I think at certain times it can be pretty difficult. So when thinking of mentors in general, I like to put them in three similar but different buckets. So the first one is going to be upperclassmen. When you start out as a little baby MS1 or M1, you don't really know anything. So that is where it's really important to have more kind of an upperclassman mentor at that stage, who is maybe a year older than you in class, who can be like, hey, I remember that test. It was awful. You should study X, Y, and Z. They've been through it. They took the board exam. They went on that same rotation that you did and had to work those crazy hours. They know what that feels like. They know who some of the better teaching attendings are and just the inside information. The second bucket that I think of are residents. These are, training physicians that are still, in my mind, close enough to medical school that hopefully they still remember what is going on. So the pros are that they finished medical school. They're doctors, they've been through it, they applied, they did all that fun stuff, and now they're actually practicing medicine. So they've been through that entire process. A good resident mentor, even if you don't keep up with them throughout rotations, is going to help you look the best you possibly can on that rotation, on that day. And then my last bucket is faculty. They know what makes a good medical student. They know what you need to do to shine and how to really impress and be a good doctor. And they can help you through that. They're probably going to be really helpful at getting you into residency and helping with your residency application, because that's a bit more recent. And most faculty members work with residents. Finding a mentor in M3 or MS3 or your clerkship year, whatever it may be called, is probably the most important, because those are the people that have seen you with patients. And there is something to be said for a fully graduated attending physician who is willing to vouch on your behalf as a medical student that I've seen you work well with patients and I think you would be a good doctor. That is the end all be all. There's some certain things that I personally look for. So number one being approachability. Is this someone that I feel comfortable emailing and want to even talk on the phone or get together in person? If I'm scared of that person because they're so high ranked and whatnot, I don't think I'd be my genuine self. And I think that would be a difficult relationship to have. You really want to look for someone, ideally in the specialty you want to go into, but if not, that's totally cool too. So that's really where finding a mentor that doesn't just necessarily align with you specialty-wise, but sex, gender, age, lived experiences, speaking other languages, medical mission trips. There's a million and one things outside of the actual hospital that you can connect with a mentor on and really strengthen that relationship. So at this point, you've likely found a mentor or two or three or 1,000, but you want to keep that mentor. So we got to work on building that relationship and strengthening that relationship. Number one, it's going to take time. I feel like the early stages of reaching out to a mentor are almost the most important, and that starts with communication. That professionalism that we started with, we should probably keep. They get Dear Dr. X, Y, and Z in the start of the email, my signature sincerely, Konnor Davis, whatnot, and they get the whole shebang. And then there's this beautiful change that happens the longer that they're a mentor to you. And not always, some people still remain very professional the entire time, but very likely that your mentor-mentee relationship is going to blossom in such a way where that email might turn into a text. That text might turn into, hey, I really need to meet up with you and get coffee. Are you free this month? Another important consideration is being really proactive. Likely, whatever mentor you have is donating their time for you, but they're busy. There is absolutely this idea and stigma even of we're attendings, we're physicians, we're super busy. And so you're afraid to email, you're afraid to reach out with a question. It is a total natural human experience, medical student experience, to feel anxious about the tiniest things, which can be sending a follow-up email to an attending. I have been there, but what is something you might not realize is having that mentee reach out, or you reaching out to that mentor, is actually probably the preferred route. And I would venture to say 90% of attending physicians would agree with me that sending follow-up emails and being proactive in this relationship is very helpful for them. So it's really important, especially with that clinical mentor relationship, to be a sponge. With your clinical mentor, there's some things that they do really well that might be different than a pre-clerkship mentor or an upperclassman. Medical school teaches you a whole bunch of book knowledge or sketchy knowledge and everything that you want, but everyone practices medicine different. That's why it's called a practice. So learning from them clinically is probably one of the most important things you can get out of that relationship. If you have a really complex question of, hey, I noticed that this patient is in stage 3 heart failure and you went for X medication instead of Y, even though I read in first aid or saw on Sketchy that a thiazide diuretic is preferred over a LASIK. Why did you make that decision? That is the perfect question, because it shows you understand the clinical context of what is going on, but you're asking a clinical question that is likely experience-based. When you're with them in the hospital, you should be absorbing not just what they are saying, but how they say it. You might be really, really good at your basic science knowledge. You can tell me all the pathophysiology of congestive heart failure without blinking an eye. That's awesome. But I want you to pay attention to how that physician explains that diagnosis to a patient for the first time. What words do they use? What is their tone of voice? Are they sitting down as they do it, or are they standing up? These are the things that as an early M1 or an M2, you're really focusing on what they are saying. And that's totally okay, because we're new to medicine, we're learning things. As an M3 and an M4, and even as a resident, you're starting to pick up more on the nuances of how things are said, how they do it, and how they prepare. Another portion that your clinical mentor can help you kind of non-clinically is relationships. And it's really important in medicine to get to know people. It's a very social kind of, a lot of communication that goes on, a lot of networking. In medicine, names matter and connections matter. As much as some of us wish that wasn't true, it is. Using those shared connections and getting to know people is paramount with having a clinical mentor in the non-clinical sense. And then kind of the last portion of really building and strengthening that relationship is showing them gratitude. If they're willing to take you out for dinner, for example, or help you edit a personal statement or an essay, saying thank you and really showing them, or even like a thank you card. You don't need to put a gift card in it. They know you're broke. You don't need to do that. But a really nice handwritten thank you card goes a long way. There's some things you absolutely should probably avoid doing. The first thing is oversharing. You are likely getting to know them early on. Probably not the best time to spill all your juicy details about your personal life. A similar thing that can catch them off guard, depending on the mentor kind of relationship, is spamming. You want to talk to them, you want to get to know them, and they want to get to know you too. But 6 text messages at 4 a.m., a whole bunch of emails in a row without them responding. Again, let's remember to be professional. Let's remember how to communicate with other adults. When we get into the maintenance phase, there's a chance that you've done everything right, you've done everything you can. You haven't spammed, you've been proactive, you've shared good questions, and the relationship just isn't what you want it to be. And that's okay. Not every mentor-mentee relationship is going to foster a lifelong connection or really be as fruitful as you had hoped. Now, if you're doing paperwork for them, if you're doing a bunch of research for them, and they're just not really communicating, you feel a little used even, it's probably not the best relationship to have. So there's just some key signs and things to look out for when things might be going a little downhill. Because there are people who write fantastic letters, but are awful mentors. And that's the brutal truth of it. So there's a couple really important things that I'd like to leave you with about the mentor-mentee relationship and just mentorship in medical school in general. The first being, It's okay to admit that this process is hard. Finding a mentor is hard. Getting that relationship to fully bloom is hard. It might come easy in certain situations. It might be really difficult in others, but I promise you it's worth it. I am very fortunate to have been mentored by a ton of people, so I try to give back and do the exact same thing. I don't think you can make it through medical school without at least one mentor, if not a few. I encourage you to be a part of both sides of this relationship. I encourage you to find a mentor, someone that can give you that guidance and that expertise. I also encourage you to, be a mentor yourself. And if you've watched this entire video, these snippets, whatever you've watched, and you can't find or think of anyone to be a mentor, you have one built in right here. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk to you about whatever you need in medicine, in medical school, whatnot. So you know you have at least one person who's willing to mentor you right here.